Hey folks, Jason here. And let me tell you something, there's nothing worse than seeing your car's temperature gauge doing the jitterbug. 1 minute it's normal, the next it's creeping up towards the red zone. That, my friends, is a recipe for disaster, and a big fat repair bill you don't want. We're talking blown head gaskets, warped cylinder heads, even a completely cooked engine if you're really unlucky. But don't you worry your pretty little heads, because today, I'm gonna walk you through the most common reasons your temperature gauge is acting up. We'll talk about what could be causing it, how much it'll cost you to fix, and most importantly, how you might be able to tackle some of these repairs yourself and save some hard-earned cash. So buckle up, grab a wrench, and let's get this show on the road. Alright, first up on our hit list is the thermostat. Now, this little guy might seem insignificant, but trust me, a bad thermostat can cause all sorts of temperature chaos in your engine. See, the thermostat's job is to regulate the flow of coolant through your engine. Think of it like a valve, opening and closing to make sure your engine stays at that sweet, optimal temperature. When your engine's cold, the thermostat stays closed, keeping the coolant trapped in the engine block so it can warm up faster. Then, once the engine reaches the right temperature, the thermostat opens up, allowing the coolant to circulate through the radiator and keep things from getting too hot. But here's the kicker. When your thermostat gets stuck, it throws the whole system out of whack. If it's stuck closed, the coolant can't circulate properly, and your engine starts to overheat. You'll see that temperature gauge creeping up, and you might even notice steam billowing out from under the hood. Not a good sign. On the flip side, if the thermostat's stuck open, the engine might struggle to reach its optimal operating temperature. This can lead to poor fuel economy, increased emissions, and even engine wear in the long run. Now, the good news is that replacing a thermostat is usually a pretty straightforward job, even for you beginner mechanics out there. You're looking at about $20 to $50 for the part itself, and you can probably find a YouTube video showing you how to do it on your specific car model. Of course, if you're not comfortable getting your hands dirty, any decent mechanic can handle this for you. Just be prepared to shell out a bit more for labor costs. But hey, a little preventative maintenance goes a long way, right? Catching a faulty thermostat early can save you a whole lot of trouble and expensive repairs down the road. Next up, we're talking about low coolant levels, another common culprit behind those wacky temperature gauge readings. Now, your car's cooling system is a closed loop, meaning the coolant is supposed to stay contained within the engine, radiator, and hoses. But sometimes, leaks can spring up, and that precious coolant can start to disappear faster than a politician's promises. A tiny leak might not seem like a big deal at first, but over time, it can lead to a significant drop in coolant levels. And when there's not enough coolant in the system, your engine can't cool down properly. That's when you'll start to see that temperature gauge doing the cha-cha. Now, there are a few telltale signs that you might be losing coolant. First, keep an eye out for any puddles of bright green, pink, or orange fluid under your car. That's your coolant, and it shouldn't be taking a vacation on the pavement. You might also notice a sweet, syrupy smell coming from under the hood, which is another sign of a coolant leak. And of course, if your coolant reservoir is consistently low, even after you've topped it off, you've definitely got a leak somewhere. Finding and fixing a coolant leak can be as simple as tightening a loose hose clamp, or it could involve replacing a leaky radiator or water pump. The cost of repair can vary widely depending on the severity of the leak and what needs to be replaced. A simple hose clamp might only set you back a few bucks, while a new radiator could cost you a few hundred. But whatever you do, don't ignore a coolant leak. Driving with low coolant is like playing Russian roulette with your engine. Sooner or later, you're gonna have a very bad and very expensive day. Now, let's talk about a sneaky little devil that can really mess with your head, the temperature sensor. This little guy's job is to keep tabs on your engine's temperature and send that information to your dashboard gauge. But just like any other sensor in your car, it can go bad, leaving you with inaccurate readings and a whole lot of confusion. Imagine this. Your temperature gauge is showing that your engine's about to melt down, but in reality, everything's hunky-dory under the hood. Or even worse, the gauge says everything's fine, but your engine's actually overheating like crazy. Talk about a recipe for disaster. So, how do you know if your temperature sensor is the culprit? Well, one telltale sign is if your temperature gauge starts acting erratically, jumping up and down for no apparent reason. You might also notice that the gauge readings don't seem to match up with how the engine's actually running. For example, the gauge might be showing a high temperature, but the engine doesn't feel hot to the touch, and there's no steam coming from under the hood. Now the good news is that replacing a temperature sensor is usually a pretty cheap and easy fix. The sensor itself will only set you back about $10 to $30, and you can probably find a YouTube video showing you how to replace it yourself. It's usually just a matter of unplugging the old sensor, screwing in the new one, and you're good to go. Of course, if you're not comfortable messing around with sensors, any mechanic can do this for you in a jiffy. Just be prepared to pay a bit more for labor. But hey, a new temperature sensor is a small price to pay for peace of mind, right? Alright, next up on our list of temperature tampering troublemakers is the radiator. Now, this big guy is like the heart of your car's cooling system, responsible for dissipating all that heat generated by your engine. But when your radiator's clogged up or leaking like a sieve, it can throw a real wrench in the works. Think of your radiator like a giant set of lungs, with all those little fins and tubes designed to maximize surface area and allow heat to escape from the coolant. But over time, those fins can get clogged with dirt, debris, and even bugs, restricting airflow and reducing the radiator's ability to do its job. And if that wasn't bad enough, radiators can also spring leaks, either from corrosion damage or just plain old wear and tear. Now, a clogged radiator will usually cause your engine to overheat gradually, especially during heavy loads or hot weather. You'll notice that temperature gauge creeping up slowly, and you might even see some steam coming from under the hood. A leaky radiator, on the other hand, can cause a more sudden and dramatic temperature spike as the coolant level drops rapidly. So what can you do if you suspect your radiator's the culprit? Well, first things first, check for any obvious signs of leaks, like puddles of coolant under your car or a consistently low coolant level. If you see a leak, you'll need to get it fixed as soon as possible. A minor leak might be repairable, but a severely damaged radiator will need to be replaced. As for a clogged radiator, you can try flushing it out with a garden hose or using a specialized radiator cleaner. But if that doesn't do the trick, you might need to bite the bullet and get a new one. Radiator repairs and replacements can vary widely in cost, depending on the severity of the problem and the make and model of your car. A simple flush might only set you back a few bucks, while a new radiator could cost you a few hundred plus labor. But hey, a well-maintained radiator is essential for keeping your engine cool and happy, so don't skimp on this crucial component. Alright, let's talk about the water pump, the unsung hero of your car's cooling system. This little pump is responsible for circulating coolant through your engine, radiator, and all those hoses, keeping everything running at the right temperature. But when your water pump starts to fail, it's like the engine's heart skipping a beat, and that's never a good thing. See, the water pump is driven by a belt connected to your engine's crankshaft. As the crankshaft spins, it turns the belt, which in turn spins the water pump's impeller, drawing coolant from the radiator and pushing it through the engine block. But over time, that belt can wear out, stretch, or even break, leaving your water pump dead in the water. And if that wasn't bad enough, the bearings inside the water pump can also wear out, causing the impeller to wobble, bind, or even seize up completely. When that happens, your coolant flow is severely restricted and your engine's in danger of overheating. Now, a failing water pump will usually give you a few warning signs before it completely kicks the bucket. One of the most common symptoms is a high-pitched whining or squealing noise coming from the front of your engine. That's the sound of the worn-out bearings crying out for help. You might also notice coolant leaking from the water pump itself, either from a crack in the housing or a failed seal. And of course, if your engine starts to overheat, even after you've checked the other components we've discussed, a failing water pump is definitely a strong suspect. Replacing a water pump is a bit more involved than some of the other repairs we've covered, but it's still doable for you DIYers out there. You'll need to drain the coolant, remove the serpentine belt, and then unbolt the old water pump and install the new one. Just be sure to follow the proper torque specifications when tightening the bolts, or you could end up with a nasty leak. The cost of a new water pump can vary depending on the make and model of your car, but you're probably looking at around $50 to $150 for the part itself. Labor costs can add another $100 or so, depending on your mechanic's hourly rate. But hey, a new water pump is a small price to pay for a healthy, happy engine, right? Alright folks, last but not least, we're tackling a sneaky little problem that can cause big headaches, air pockets in the cooling system. Now you might be thinking, air in my cooling system? How does that even happen? Well, it's actually more common than you might think. See, whenever you open up your cooling system, whether it's to replace a hose, top off the coolant, or even just check the level, air can sneak in and get trapped. And just like those pesky air bubbles in your garden hose, air pockets in your cooling system can disrupt the flow of coolant, leading to hot spots, overheating, and even engine damage. Now you might be wondering, how do I know if I've got air in my cooling system? Well, there are a few telltale signs. One of the most common is if your engine temperature fluctuates erratically, even though the coolant level is fine. You might also notice that the heater doesn't blow hot air, even when the engine is warmed up. And in some cases you might even hear gurgling or bubbling noises coming from the heater core or radiator. So, how do you get rid of these pesky air pockets? Well, it's actually a pretty straightforward process called burping or bleeding the cooling system. Basically, you're just creating a way for the trapped air to escape while refilling the system with coolant. Now, the exact procedure for bleeding the cooling system varies depending on the make and model of your car, but the general idea is the same. You'll need to find the bleeder valve or screw, which is usually located on the thermostat housing, radiator, or one of the heater hoses. Once you've found the bleeder valve, you'll need to open it slightly while refilling the cooling system with coolant. As you fill the system, air will escape through the bleeder valve, and you'll see a steady stream of coolant coming out. Once all the air is out and you've got a steady stream of coolant, you can close the bleeder valve and top off the coolant reservoir. Bleeding the cooling system is one of those basic maintenance tasks that every car owner should know how to do. It's relatively simple, doesn't require any special tools, and can save you a lot of trouble and expense down the road. So, next time you're working on your car's cooling system, don't forget to give it a good burp. So there you have it, folks. 6 common reasons why your temperature gauge might be acting up and how to get those problems solved. Remember, a little preventative maintenance goes a long way when it comes to your car's cooling system. Keep an eye on that coolant level, check for leaks regularly, and don't ignore those warning signs like strange noises or overheating. And if you're ever in doubt, don't hesitate to take your car to a trusted mechanic. They've got the experience and expertise to diagnose and fix any cooling system problems you might encounter. Now I know some of you might be tempted to ignore those little temperature fluctuations, hoping they'll just magically go away. But trust me folks, that's a recipe for disaster. Ignoring a cooling system problem is like playing Russian roulette with your engine. Sooner or later you're gonna have a very bad and very expensive day. So be proactive. Stay on top of those maintenance tasks, and keep your car running cool for years to come.